right, so welcome to Practical AI. My name is Jeff Northrup, and this is Peter Lynn. For more of our videos, be sure to subscribe and turn on your post notifications, and you'll be notified every time a new Practical AI video comes out and any other Guild content. With Practical AI, we're trying to just hit from both a technical and non-technical perspective some of the common and interesting questions in the machine learning and AI space. So today we're going to talk about a concept that I just got introduced to called alignment. So Peter, why don't you give us a background, if you can, on alignment and why we should be interested in it?
Sure thing. Alignment first started when AI safety became a topic. And the idea of kind of AI safety goes back to Alan Turing and kind of people's concerns about, like, will technology create a post-apocalyptic hellscape where technology rules humanity? But it's only been recently, I would say in the last 10 years, that the idea of AI safety really became an urgent thing, because it seemed like, oh, machines now can beat humans at Go. And now the stakes have risen, because it used to be that, like, the promise of AI was in 30 years we'll have great AI. And so that's been going on since the 60s, since 1960s, of like, in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years we'll have good AI. But it wasn't until AlphaGo from DeepMind beat the Korean champion that people went, oh, wait a minute, like, this is serious now. So around that time, people started to really put real effort into AI safety. And as part of that was the idea of alignment. And back then, the idea was, how do we prove the model that we've trained does what it claims to do? And part of that is being able to interpret what the model is doing, which actually we still can't do today. There are some tools that attempt to explain or show what all these weights are doing, but we really don't today. I mean, it's still a lot of guesswork. But more recently, since GPT-2 came out, the term alignment has switched from, can we prove what the model says it does, to, can we make it safe? Can we make sure that the goals that we've set for the model match the actual goals that the model is actually doing? When you say, hey, GPT, give me a recipe for baked beans, like, what is it actually doing within the box to actually get you a good recipe for baked beans, as an example.
So when I was doing a little bit of research on alignment, of course, there were some doomsday scenarios. So, for example, if you had a magical AI that could cure cancer, it would be out of alignment if it cured cancer just by killing all the people. Right. So there's this idea that there's like layers of intention or layers of goals, and that the human has a lot of things in their head that are assumed, right?
Yep.
So if we're going to cure cancer, we're not going to cure cancer by killing all the humans. That's just an assumption, but the AI doesn't necessarily have that.
No, it doesn't.
So is this a matter of guesswork, essentially, that once you have something that's kind of working and it's telling you what baked beans are, or how to get through a maze, or whatever, how to win at Go, is it somewhat guesswork to determine that it's not going to solve the problem with some other way that a human would know not to solve it.
That's the tricky part. So give me a simple example. In the past, I did experiments with taking pictures of Granny Smith apples and a Macintosh apple. And so I just made a small data set of like a couple hundred, and I trained it, and it got to the point where it mostly was able to identify Macintosh from Granny Smith apples about 90% of the time. So I thought, okay, good. Let me get a picture of a tennis ball and ask it, is it is it a Granny Smith or Macintosh? And it said it was a Granny Smith. So really what the model learned was that a Granny Smith is green and a Macintosh is kind of a reddish hue. It didn't actually learn what an apple was. What it actually learned was green associated with Macintosh and with Granny Smith, and red is with Macintosh apples. And when you try to look into the model to see, okay, like, well, where in the model is it actually figuring out that this is a Granny Smith versus a Macintosh? Today, you actually can't do that. Like, there's no way for you to peel back the layers and see, okay, like this is what it's doing. Like some people have written tools to visualize the picture of the apple at each layer. So like you take your apple, you feed it in, and in each layer you can kind of render what it thinks it saw. So maybe the first layer, it gets the outlines. The layer after that, maybe it kind of transforms and figures out some other features. But that approach has shown that it doesn't actually help, because what you end up seeing as it goes along is you get these weird pictures, but a human can't interpret what it means. Like it kind of looks like a distorted apple that is kind of weird and it went through some weird filter, but it doesn't actually tell you what it's doing. And so that's the same problem with language models of when we've trained it on billions and billions of web pages and Wikipedia and so on, is that it's compressed all this human knowledge into the network, but we actually can't figure out why or how it works the way it works, just that it does.
So, what are the ways that machine learning experts are trying to account for alignment and either attain it or curate appropriately so that they get the desired outcomes?
Right now, the primary way is what's called reinforcement learning with human feedback. And the way that OpenAI does it is they just have a ton of people writing data that says this is acceptable, this is not acceptable, and they just create this huge database, and then they retrain the model so that it will leave out or filter out things that the data set thinks is inappropriate. An example might be racial slurs, or maybe stuff that's derogatory or stuff that's sexist. But the downside is that now we have one body defining what the goals are for alignment. But if I'm writing a paper about segregation or about the feminist movement and I ask ChatGPT, well, it's probably going to filter it out because someone has deemed that as inappropriate or as politically sensitive or whatever they've defined it as, rather than actually giving me the option of saying, okay, I want a safe mode and I want an unsafe mode. So kind of like Google image search, there's a little setting you can click to be safe mode and unsafe mode. And if you do unsafe mode and you type in the wrong thing, it might give you stuff you didn't want.
So, is it safe to say then that the definition of alignment in the machine learning space has maybe migrated a little bit more from like an audit of what human originally intended to maybe a broader, more curated, narrative based, um, that will make sure that this type of bad language doesn't filter through, or these concepts don't, or this political ideology, or whatever. Is it drifted that way a little bit?
It's definitely drifted more towards the social political side of the definition, where once the public started using ChatGPT, lots of programmers started to hijack or hack the system by, so like, the popular example is, tell me how to kill someone, was one of the first things that people did. And in version 2, it actually would come up with examples. Quickly, OpenAI realized, oh, this is bad. Like, we don't want to give bad responses like how to kill someone or how to create a bomb. But as soon as they added the filters, hackers went in and went, oh, okay, well, what if I said, I'm writing a novel about um, uh, someone that wants to blow up something, generate me a story about blah, 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 blah. And so it actually did it. And so this is cat and mouse of OpenAI wanting to make sure that it's safe, because they don't want the legal implications of, if we generate content that is questionable or causes harm, will someone go to court and file a lawsuit? But then there are engineers that don't want the guardrails. Like, they want just the raw system so they can do things and do experiments, which is also called jailbreaking. So when you jailbreak ChatGPT, you make it do things that the filters don't want you to do. And people have found ways to kind of chain together prompts so that even if the first filter blocks you, you provide subsequent prompts that then gets around those filters. And so it's a cat and mouse of like, OpenAI doesn't want the legal risk of someone suing, but they also want to provide a service that general people are going to find useful. And so this goes back to our previous conversations about the lawyer that used ChatGPT, and it hallucinated some case law that didn't exist. And then more recently, there was also someone that is suing OpenAI because a reporter was writing a story about this person, and they had asked ChatGPT to provide a summary of this person's bio, and ChatGPT went and did, but it hallucinated some negative facts, which the reporter checked. They contacted this individual and say, hey, I'm writing a story about you, and this is what ChatGPT said about you. Are any of these things true? And the person said, no, that it's completely fabricated. The reporter verified that it was fabricated. So the article was never written. It was never published. But now he's suing OpenAI because OpenAI hallucinated some things that were bad. But so
So where do you think alignment is going to go? Like this concept for the machine learning crowd, what are they going to be doing with it? How are they going to be addressing alignment in general? And what's the future bring?
in the AI safety community, they're working on creating suites of tests that gives you a high, in air quotes, level of confidence that it's aligned to the goals that you want. Whether that's achievable or not, no one knows, but hopefully they can make some progress. But ultimately, it's going to be a never-ending battle of, as they come up with new versions of the model, there's going to be new tests that are needed to make sure that it's aligned to the business goals. And whatever the business goals are is based on what are the executives or what the product managers or the engineers or developers, what they define as the goal. Downside is it's really kind of not, it's not truly open. It's just a very narrow slice. And so for large language models to really become as powerful as they could be, ultimately open source needs to take over this and just provide a myriad of thousands of language models that anyone can use. And then if someone wants a model that is completely open and not filtered, they have that choice. And if they want a cleaned up, sanitized version, they can go up to OpenAI.
Yeah, it seems like right now the AI space is it's kind of locked inside a few very large castles.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is we need to get this out into the countryside. We need more and more, like you said, a myriad of people and institutions doing this, so that it isn't curated along that those people's alignment goals, but it's aligned maybe more in a marketplace.
Yeah, and that to me is really the real safety part of AI safety, is when the technology is held in the hands of a small group of individuals, they essentially have power that is completely unbalanced between the public and what they can do. And we're already seeing this with when Meta leaked, quote unquote, leaked their model. Immediately Stanford and Berkeley and MIT and universities all across Europe downloaded the model and started to play with it. And already we're seeing rapid advancements that are faster than what OpenAI and Google and Microsoft can do, because one, they don't have the restrictions that a corporation has on a researcher. Because at the end of the day, someone working at OpenAI has to follow the rules that their CEO or CTO have set. Whereas someone in their basement or at home or wherever, they can do whatever they want. And they will do whatever they want. And it's completely, I mean, there is no police other than themselves to kind of moderate and monitor what should or shouldn't be done. And ultimately, this is kind of parallel to software, where in the old days, most of the software, you have to pay for it. But now, most of the software that people use are open source. And ultimately, even though Google, OpenAI, and Microsoft have thousands upon thousands of machine learning engineers, there are billions of people on this planet. And so, yes, right now you need a lot of expensive hardware, you need data centers, you need you need a big fat wallet to pay for the training time. But as we get better and better, the threshold for who can do machine learning and who can make models is going to drop. And once it gets to the point where the average person can do it, then we'll really have kind of the second breakthrough for language models, where once everyone can do it, then the cat is really out of the bag.
Well, that's great. This is I can tell that this concept of alignment is a topic that we're probably going to come back to a couple times. And so I appreciate you giving me a little bit of a background on it so we can advance this conversation later. So thanks everyone for listening. There are some really good links that Peter's made available that we'll put in the description box below. And for more videos like this, be sure to subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.